Hello and welcome to the 6th episode of Confessions of a Rock and Roll Cameraman, the podcast. Now we're going to do a little housekeeping because it's important. If you're on YouTube or the visual video channels, please like and subscribe. And if you're on YouTube, hit that bell so you get all the notifications when we put on a new show. If you're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Samsung, Google, RSS.com, all of those places. If you're on those, also like and subscribe and share with your friends because that's important. Sharing with your friends. Because what we're doing here is we're building a digital community.
Sharing is caring, Pat.
Sharing is caring. And on the Corn RC website, you can go there. Yeah. And also, if you subscribe, you will get the medley of the 80s novelette written by our man, Tony Wanamaker.
Thank you, sir. Yes.
And now, on with our current program. Brought to you by us, Tony and Pat. I'm Pat Canavan, and my friend
Tony Wanamaker. Hi.
And welcome. So today's episode is a bit country, and that's why I'm dressed like the man in black, Johnny Cash himself. And I had a ring of fire, but that was because of chicken wings. So, Tony, you got to meet some great legends. Let's talk Johnny Cash.
Well, undoubtedly, Johnny Cash is one of the biggest stars I've ever had the pleasure to meet. And I'm a kid from a small town, Picton, Ontario. My parents, my grandparents, we were into agriculture, man. We were farmers. And so we played a lot of the old score. And, we're going back to like Wilf Carter, right? We're going back to Don Messer, Don Messer's Jubilee. We watched that faithfully. Tommy Hunter Show, big deal in my town. Everybody liked it in the county, but the king was Cash, the man in black.
You know, Cash is still king.
Absolutely.
On two levels.
Yes.
So Johnny Cash, I was amazed reading this section of your book that his wife, June Carter Cash, actually wrote Ring of Fire.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's an amazing confluence of country superstars. And you got to think that, June Carter came from the Carter family. The Carter family were the first, if you will, country global superstars at the time. They actually only had to write and record music, if that wasn't enough. But they didn't have to have a part-time job. So they were the first country supergroup. And here is the pedigree, which is June Carter. It made sense at some point that Johnny Cash and June Carter would hook up. This would end up being Johnny Cash's second marriage and a very fruitful collaboration because a couple of things happened, Pat. I would say that Ring of Fire made a big difference. It made Johnny Cash a global superstar.
Well, it sure did, yeah.
And the other hit, my friend, surprisingly, was one called Folsom Prison that he wrote back in 1955.
Folsom Prison. Now, that's key, right? That's key for his career, but it didn't really...
Huge.
That song didn't make it in the 50s.
No, and later in life he recorded that, and at the urging from a minister of his congregation, he decided to perform in a prison.
Okay. Nobody
was doing that. And don't forget, he was only inspired to write the song by watching a movie about prison life. Okay? He was never in prison. He told me this, which is great. He said, Tony, there's a myth about me spending time in prison, man, because I wrote Folsom Prison. And I said, wow, okay, that's what I thought. But like most people, that's not true. He spent a couple of nights in the drunk can. A lot of the guys, like Waylon Jennings back in the time, although Waylon Jennings spent a little more time.
So just an overnight.
He did a lot of those overnights, but here he was inspired, brother, to perform at Folsom Prison. And the great thing about that concert, folks, was it changed everything for Cash. Cash had a horrible addiction at that time. He was on prescribed medications that went awry. So he had a terrible addiction. And he was suffering a lot of depression, suffering depression. And so meeting June Carter and then deciding to do the show that changed everything. Became this outrageous, popular documentary. It won him a Grammy Award. It changed his career. The music company was about oust and about to boot him out. And this revitalized everything and put it in perspective. And then Johnny Cash went on to be a real big advocate, Pat, of prison reform and really had a vested interest in making life a little more tolerable for inmates. Amazing.
Well, it's amazing that he actually had to go through this sort of dark night of the soul kind of thing to reemerge and again shed light onto an American institution that's also an American problem.
Well, you think about, you coined a phrase, American institution. There's a photograph called the Millionaire Quartet. It's one of the most famous photographs in rock and roll history. And it's Elvis Presley at the piano, flanked by Johnny Cash, Jerry Lee Lewis, and Carl Perkins. Carl Perkins, Blue Suede Shoes, folks, remember that? And here they were at Sun Records. Sam Phillips was the guy who was recording those records.
Okay.
Now, what was happening, brother, which is very interesting, Cash, Jerry Lee, Carl Perkins, right, Elvis, were Southern boys, Southern white boys that heard a lot of this music. The colloquial term was the hillbilly music, right?
Yeah, sure, hillbillies.
Yeah, mix of country, Americana,
a
little bit of blues maybe. I wouldn't settle too much on the blues, but here was this interesting mix, and going forward, what was this? And these guys were, they were the vanguard. They led in both in country and rock and roll. And I wanted to show you, Pat. So I had a chance to meet two of the great four. I blew meeting Jerry Lee Lewis. My stupidity. I should have stayed a little bit longer. Not bedtime for Bonzo, right? So this is pretty cool. This is from the old Brunswick house on Bloor Street, Pat. And here's Carl Perkins here. I got a chance to see these. These are the Toronto band, Jack the Kaiser, the Bobcats.
The Bobcats, yeah.
Jack Scott was a famous rockabilly artist at the time, but primarily I wanted to focus on Carl Perkins here. So here I had this chance to spend real quality time with Carl Perkins at the Brunswick house. And I was honored to meet, one of the key people in, if you will, the genesis of rock and roll music.
Well, what's amazing is when I think of Johnny Cash, I don't think the genesis of rock and roll.
Fair enough.
But Sun Records,
Yep.
and these were four pillars,
Oh,
right? These were the four pillars, I guess, of rock and roll, weren't they?
Oh, absolutely.
And Carl Perkins wrote so many hits for so many people, mostly Elvis.
Yeah.
But like masters.
Yeah.
But what the heck brought you, Much Music, to the Brunswick house for Carl Perkins?
Well, back in the day, producer John Martin, always a savvy entrepreneurial guy, thought, hey, here's, Carl Perkins, we're willing to do something, and a number of bands and put the show together. But what was really cool is we kind of moved forward and spend a little bit of time with them because I'm a fan. I'm a fan of country music. Huge fan of Johnny Cash.
You can tell by the shirt.
Right? And so I had a chance to spend a weekend in Nashville, Tennessee, the home of country music. And being there as a weekend warrior, an urban cowboy, I went down with, I was going to say my Yoko Ono, but I'm saying Rhonda's my Patty Scalfa. She actually helps me write music, so I like that. But I'm down there with my Patty, and we had a great weekend. And being a fan, I'm going to visit the highlights, Printer's Alley. I'm going to go to, at that time they had Opryland, which is pretty cool. Going to the Grand Ole Opry. Hey, you had to go to the House of the Holy, House of the Country Holy. And then ultimately, my father-in-law, being the bus driver, I said, hey, man, can you indulge me? And so he pulls over to the side of the house in front of Johnny Cash's mansion, and a little over-exuberant, a little excited, grabbed my Pentax 35-millimeter camera, because I'm a paparazzi guy now, and I jump up on the stone rampart, and then I just jump down on his property. Yeah, I'm trespassing. Yeah, I'm paparazzi. Like, what the hell am I doing there?
What, you broke in on Johnny and June? What, they having breakfast, some flapjacks?
Yeah, they must be going, who is that Canadian a-hole with a really bad mullet and the cowboy hat on, right? But anyways, survived that. The cool thing is, years later, Much Music, and we can talk about that in a second, Pat, is vying for a new license, a country music license.
Okay.
That being said, we are shooting anything country. So lo and behold, the king and queen of country music land in Toronto. Modest hotel. They're very modest people. They're super rich, right? So we're at the little downtown hotel. And Pat, lo and behold, man, I walk in and there he was. Larger than life, brother. I'm gobsmacked. It's the inimitable Man in Black. It is Johnny Cash, man. It's pretty damn cool.
Okay, so
Wow.
why?
That was amazing. I think of this day because you spend your life, you know, and you see your parents, and this is a big beat in our family, right? And now you're making this connection. For those of you who are fans who've had a chance to seek an autograph for somebody you love and admire, it's a really big deal, brother. And this was one of the big ones for me.
Okay, so that's glorious because, yeah, you, first of all, have met so many people. So to be so gobsmacked by Johnny Cash.
That's a very astute comment, man. Yeah.
Now, if you're there with him, why are you there with him in the 80s for Much Music?
That's a fair question. And that was because we were vying for a new license. And, John Martin, genius, he sets things in motion so that we're already doing it, if you will, empirically, right? So when we go vie for a license, they go, well, it's kind of like this. It's already been track tested, right? And so at that point, we were shooting everything country. Lovely young man named Bill Welichka, who now is a host over here next door in Kingston, Ontario. And they love him over at CKWS, and the city loves him, and I'm not surprised. Right? Charming guy, knew what he was doing, a great editor at the time.
Okay, so he was editing for Much?
Editing for Much Music, beautiful Samson hair, these long locks. Every guy hated him. Every girl loved him. And so charming on many accounts. So Bill went from editing material to hosting it.
Wow,
right?
okay, that's great. And so you're there with Bill. What was the show?
We were doing a segment again for Outlaws and Heroes. Denise Donlin was getting a push up the ranks, and she got a promotion to the director of programming. John, sadly, was getting the Japanese exit. He was kind of led to the door with an agenda and with no agenda. And so John and his cronies got together, and they were seeking a license at the time.
Oh, so he was seeking the country music license outside of the Much Music realm.
Yeah.
Ah, the door.
Yes.
I see.
So surprisingly, a lot of people kept close contact to John at this point because I think if he would have received the license, then there would have been a max exodus from the building because people quite love John. Right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you were doing, so you're doing Outlaws and Heroes.
Yeah.
In an attempt to get a license, or John's attempt to get a license for a country music station on the digital realm. Mm-hmm. So we didn't have a country music station yet in Canada.
No, and that didn't officially become the Country Music Network as we know it until 1996. So everybody's vying for that in 94 and fighting for it, right?
Right.
Yeah, it didn't happen, and sadly for John, I think he invested a lot of money in that. It didn't. The bid went awry, but and they gave it to somebody else. That said, though, it was really great because now we're covering another important genre of music because we're moving away from mostly pop music, rock and roll, power hour, and now we're introducing country artists such as Johnny Cash.
Yeah.
But the cool thing is, brother, how often do you get a chance to redeem yourself to a global superstar?
Not very often.
Not very often, brother. And so I thought to myself, lo and behold, I had this great meeting with Cash. And man, the biggest stars, brother, I've said this to you before, are very humble. And they have a way to energize a room, their charisma, and their level of hospitality.
So wait a minute. You're saying to me that you sat down with Johnny Cash in a hotel room and on the side, you were going to blab that you jumped into his house?
Not initially. I was terrified because he's a big guy and he's larger than life. And he's got that look, man, like John Wayne swagger. So I finally got the courage, brother. And I said, I'm going to come clean here. And I said, Mr. Cash. And I explained the situation to him that I was ostensibly trespassing. I committed a crime. I'm going to come clean. Folsom Prison, let's, inmate reform.
There you go.
Right? And so he said, 1 second. 1 second, man. I want you to tell this to somebody. So he walks away, and he comes back. And he comes back with the queen of country music, June Carter, dude.
Oh, my God. He brings his wife into the hotel with you.
Yes.
Wow.
So he said, son, tell her. And I was like, whoa, okay. So I explained it. I said, geez, this is June Carter Cash, and made myself clean. And then the king stops. He looks at her, man, and she looks at me, and she goes, Tony, well, you're a nice young man, and I think we'll let this one go. And I look over to Johnnny, and Johnnny goes, son, you got to pass. Wow. But the cool thing, brother, leading up to this.
A get out of jail free card.
Thank you for that. Get out of cash free, right? The great thing was, because it was the 90s, early 90s, and again, we talked about, we were soliciting all manner of country music acts. So we also covered Roseanne Cash, and I also had a chance to interact with Rodney Crowell.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
So you're just moving your way through the family kind of thing.
Kind of the world of Cash. And what was interesting about Roseanne is, Roseanne was married for a period of time to Rodney. And Rodney was a country music producer, writer in his own right, fantastic writer, by the way.
Yeah.
Johnny Cash loved him. So I met them at an awkward time, man.
What happened?
Well, they were breaking up after over a 10-year marriage. So it was really tough time for them. I saw the strain in our interview with Roseanne.
Okay.
And I saw that with Rodney. And Rodney was really affected. I think she left him. I'm not really sure. It doesn't really matter. They were obviously in love, estranged, and having a difficult time. So I felt like an interloper, brother, because I was on both sides of the fence. But I didn't want to tell anybody I was just with your ex, and I kind of know things I shouldn't.
Ooh.
So yeah, I stayed professionally muted.
Yeah, that sounds a little more kinky than.
But then soon I want Pat to do this with me, because this is pretty cool. Here's again those connections, those crossroads, right? So Rodney Crowell did a cover of a famous song in 1978, I think it was, that a band later, a gospel quartet, picked up on, named the Oakridge Boys, and it went something like this. It went, giddy up, papa, mow, mow. You remember that one? So Rodney did the cover of ELVIRA, and the Oakridge Boys loved it. And so they did their own version, which is a little more upbeat, and the one that became a double platinum album.
Wow. Wait, so ELVIRA was done by
Oakridge Boys. It was Rodney Crowell who did the cover. They heard it. But what was also interesting, and this harkens back to that influence of the Carter family, and I think this is why Cash found some resonance with Rodney. Rodney, when you hear that, his version, it's Americana. It's the stuff Roseanne was doing. It's the stuff the Carter family were doing.
Oh, okay.
Beautiful. Really nice take. It's sort of like, I call it our American Gothic music, right? And it really kind of works.
Yeah, so it had more of a flow than the Oakridge Boys. But
the Oakridge Boys was more apropos for the early 80s. It made sense.
Well,
right?
Sure.
And so what happened is you got this band, this quartet, that was obscure, unless you were in the gospel music, of course, and they did very well there. But It's not a genre that I spend a lot of time in. I certainly appreciate its roots. And they crossed over. Double platinum album.
Yeah.
Over 2 million records, brother. That's huge.
Oh, absolutely.
Changed his life.
Yeah.
So I digress, and I tell you that story because I'm on a Southern sojourn, and now we're ending up in Hendersonville, Tennessee, and we're going to meet William Lee Golden at his estate. And it was amazing because he lives in sort of an 18th century home, which is historic, man. I mean, it's classic antebellum Southern construction, and it actually has slave quarters built to the right of the house where William Lee lives, but nobody can go into.
So William Lee Golden lives in the slave quarters.
That's right. It's off limits to everybody else. Now, in the main house, as soon as you walk in the front door, Pat, there's a lovely, huge portrait painting of a Confederate soldier, right?
Okay.
It looks like a captain. And anyways, there's great saber marks, big X through the portrait. And William proudly likes to show this off because apparently the general now of the occupying U.S., and this is the Civil War now, so it's the U.S. Army, right? It's the Bluecoats. Bluecoats have taken over this part now of the state of Tennessee.
Tennessee.
Yeah, which is a former slave state, and have taken this over now. And I guess the commanding officer went in and cut. Enough of the Confederate bastards, right? And so, yeah, he's pretty proud of that. But we make our way out to this underground grotto on the property by the river that runs through his property.
All right.
Pretty cool little place. But on the way, you pass the teepee.
What teepee?
He's got a Plains teepee, man. Was on the property. And he had that because his wife at the time, Louetta, and I just want to get this right, Louetta Calloway, okay? Louetta Calloway, they were having difficulties in the marriage, Pat.
So William Golden.
Yep.
William Lee Golden.
Wilden Lee. You got to get that Confederate thing in there. Yeah.
He's married too.
Yeah, so he married in 82, actually, yeah, in 84, but he met her in 82. He met the former Miss Las Vegas Tourism in 1982.
Former Miss Las Vegas Tourism.
Yeah, she was 20 years younger than he was, right? She was 5'10", a bombshell, but apparently they were estranged at the point. So she would have, Golden would send her out to the teepee, Pat, to have counsel with a First Nations shaman to work stuff out. So knowing that, it was great to have that understanding. So I left that, always looking for Louetta, but never saw her that day.
Right.
And we ended up at this underground grotto, and it was a cool place to meditate. It must have been a really groovy place to hang out. I kind of broached the notion at that point that I smoke marijuana. Okay. Devil's lettuce, Pat. The devil's lettuce. And saying that, he smiled at me, and he points to the medicine pouch. Okay? Little medicine pouch. And in that, we roll our first spliff. Fantastic! But he said, come on, if you like this, you're really going to love this. So we go back to the main house, and you know what we indulge in? A little Southern moonshine.
Moonshine?
Moonshine.
Oh,
White lightning, man. So it was awesome. Got it in the proverbial mason jar, had a hit of that, and I'll be honest, folks, I do not endorse hard drugs, but I tried LSD once, okay, and it was like that hallucinogenic vibe, but more enriched. It was awesome, actually. Moonshine got me really high.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because my dad brought back Irish poaching.
What is that, Pat?
Northern Ireland once. And it's Irish moonshine made from potatoes.
Made from potatoes?
Potatoes. And it was the only alcohol I've ever had. Yeah. He was in a milk of magnesia bottle. And so one day I'll try this. It never made it to my stomach. I put it in my mouth, and it dissolved by the time it hit my throat. It was the weirdest thing.
And how did you feel?
I don't remember. So it must have been great.
Well, in my hallucinogenic state,
yeah.
Okay. Ooh, you see that now? Background going? Okay, perfect. So in my hallucinogenic state, somehow I sober up, and now I end up at like a Legion bar.
Oh, my gosh.
Yep. And I'm going... Okay, and I'm with Christopher Ward, who was a VJ. Because I'm on this sojourn with Christopher Ward.
Oh, right, because you're down there with much music, of course, and that's why you're...
So Chris never smokes dope or never drinks, so this is the first time he's doing this with me. He's having a marijuana stick, right, and drinking a shot of moonshine.
Holy crap.
Yeah, unbelievable. So we going through oscillations of sobriety, and then we're getting loaded. Back to sobriety, we're getting loaded. Intoxication, sobriety, right? So, anyways, I managed to shoot a little bit of B-roll because I'm sober now, and I only shoot when I'm sober. And I get some B-roll in the can of Rusty and Chris's sons because he's promoting their careers, right? And I think that's wonderful. But I finish up, and I'm kind of done, and I signal to William that I'm done, and he gives me that look, that all-knowing look, like Gandalf. He kind of looks at me and goes... And I'm going, what does he look? The pouch. The medicine pouch, Pat.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, so he wants you back in the pouch.
He throws up another dart. The next thing I remember is waking up in my hotel. Wow. Isn't that wild? What a night. So, but I have on my nightstand is a jar of moonshine.
Really?
Pat. Oh, and it's well before 9/11. You can take anything on an airplane, even the potato liquor.
Wow, so he got you all liquored up and high.
Yeah.
And then afterwards got you to your hotel room and well, he probably put that on your side table just because, hair of the dog the next morning you might need it.
And to that point, now if I was writing a fiction, I might have been that I was dumped off at the airport and I woke up on the sidewalk. But anyways, thank you, William Lee, right, for that. That was fascinating. And if you look, please have a look, and Pat will throw up here a picture of William Lee. And William Lee had the iconic look. He was the mountain man. And actually, he pissed off his colleagues at the time because they looked a lot like Gentlemen's Quarterly, right? They're really quite cosmopolitan in their look.
Well,
quite
I guess
refined.
I guess they were dressed in their Sunday best.
Yeah, and here
Right?
comes Willie looking like Santa Claus without the toque, right, and shades on. Awesome, but everybody knew that look, and so they were smart, they were wise, and they finally they managed to overcome their indiscretions, found peace, harmony, like the good gospel songs, and anyways, reunited, and that's the Oakridge boys, man.
Amazing.
Awesome.
Well, the viewpoint into the country world, actually the origins.
Papa, mow, mow. I love that. The thinnest guy on the planet had the heaviest voice, Richard Sturban. Love it. Weird.
Crazy. So, well, just to wrap up, I mean, today we've covered the origins of rock and roll, really. With the four pillars.
And we're going to dive into that more, Pat, when we talk about Chuck Berry. We're actually going to drill down to the beginnings, the actual origins of rock and roll music.
Well, that's great. Chuck Berry. Nice. Well, I want to say thank you to everybody for tuning into the Rock and Roll Cameraman podcast, because there are many confessions going on here. And Tony, again, your experiences, the exuberance that you tell these stories. It's engaging. It's
Thanks,
wonderful. Man. So
pleasure working with this guy, folks.
And so please, again,
does all the editing, everything, all these little things going on back here.
I'll
let him finish. Sorry.
So if you'd like to join the community, go to cornrc.com. Sign in. We'll get you some free memorabilia. Maybe not these. Oh my God.
These are dated, but what's the South, okay?
Anyway, live free and die hard. And thanks for tuning into the Confessions of a Rock and Roll Cameraman podcast. And we'll see you next time.